The dust cloud rising from the stagecoach caught Zelda Patterson's attention before the vehicle itself came into view, and she pressed her face against the window to watch the Wyoming landscape roll past, wondering if answering that newspaper advertisement had been the worst decision of her 22 years. The year was 1878, and respectable women did not typically travel alone across 3 states to work as a temporary cook for a cattle ranch. But respectability had never put food on the table or paid off her late father's debts back in St. Louis. The advertisement had been specific. Cook needed for 1 week while the regular help recovered from a broken leg. Room and board provided, plus $20. $20 represented more money than Zelda could earn in a month of taking in laundry and mending. So she had written back immediately, received a terse acceptance from someone named Gideon Irving, and packed her carpet bag before she could reconsider. Now, as the stagecoach rattled into Pueblo, Wyoming, she questioned everything. The town looked like it had been assembled hastily and might blow away in the next strong wind. Wooden buildings lined a single main street, their paint peeling under the relentless sun. Men in dusty clothing paused their conversations to stare as the stage rolled past. She clutched her bag tighter. The driver helped her down, and she stood on the packed dirt street, blinking in the bright afternoon light. According to the letter, someone would meet her here at 2 o'clock. "Miss Patterson," she turned toward the voice. A young man, perhaps 19 or 20, stood holding the reins of a wagon. He had an easy smile and kind eyes beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Yes, that's me. I'm Tommy Crawford. I work for Mr. Irving. He sent me to fetch you out to the ranch." "It's about an hour's ride." She climbed onto the wagon seat, grateful he did not make conversation right away. The town gave way to open prairie, vast and empty in a way that made her heart ache with unexpected longing. She had lived her whole life surrounded by buildings and people, noise and smoke. This silence felt almost sacred. "The ranch has been in Mr. Irving's family for 15 years, Tommy said eventually. "His father started it, built it up from nothing. When the old man passed 2 years back, Gideon took over. He runs a good operation. Fair to his workers, pays on time." "How many people work there?" "6 regular hands plus Mrs. Kowalski, who does the cooking and keeps the house. She took a fall last week, broke her leg pretty bad. Doctor says she needs to stay off it for at least 6 weeks, but she's stubborn as a mule. Kept trying to work until Mr. Irving threatened to dock her pay if she did not rest properly." The ranch appeared gradually on the horizon, materializing from the heat shimmer like something from a dream. A large 2-story house, painted white with green shutters, sat at the center. Outbuildings dotted the landscape. A massive barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, storage sheds. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, dark shapes against the golden grass. Tommy pulled the wagon up to the main house and helped her down. The front door opened, and a man stepped onto the porch. Zelda's breath caught. Gideon Irving was not what she had expected. The terse letter had conjured images of someone old, grizzled, hardened by life on the frontier. Instead, the man walking toward her looked to be in his late 20s, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of a summer thunderstorm. He wore work clothes, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. "Miss Patterson." His voice was deep, measured. "Thank you for coming all this way. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was manageable, thank you, Mr. Irving," he nodded, his expression serious. "Let me show you to your room so you can settle in. Supper needs to be ready by 6. There will be 8 people to feed, myself, 6 ranch hands, and Mrs. Kowalski, though she usually eats in her room these days." "Of course." Zelda straightened her spine. She could do this. It was only a week. The house was larger than it had appeared from outside, surprisingly well furnished for a bachelor's home. Gideon led her up a staircase to a small but clean bedroom with a window overlooking the corral. The kitchen is downstairs at the back of the house. Mrs. Kowalski left instructions for the week's meals. The hands are not particular, as long as there is plenty of it and it's hot. He paused at the door. If you need anything, I'm usually in the barn or the south pasture during the day. Then he was gone, his boots heavy on the stairs, and Zelda was alone. She unpacked quickly, changed into a work dress, and went to find the kitchen. Mrs. Kowalski was sitting at the kitchen table despite doctor's orders, her broken leg propped on a chair, making notes on a piece of paper. She was perhaps 60, with steel gray hair and sharp blue eyes that took Zelda's measure in an instant. "So you are the girl from St. Louis. You look too delicate for ranch work." "I have been cooking since I was 10 years old, madam. My mother died when I was young. It was just my father and me until he passed 3 months ago." Something softened in Mrs. Kowalski's expression. "I am sorry for your loss. Well, let us see what you can do. Everything you need is in the pantry or the cold cellar. Bread needs making for tomorrow. Tonight, the men will expect beef stew, biscuits, and something sweet for dessert. There are apples in the cellar, flour and sugar in the pantry." Zelda tied on an apron and got to work. Cooking for 8 was not much different than the church suppers she had helped with back home. She found a rhythm quickly, her hands remembering skills her mother had taught her years ago. The stew came together, rich with beef and vegetables from the garden. The biscuits rose golden and flaky. The apple pie filled the kitchen with cinnamon sweetness. At 6 o'clock precisely, men began filing into the dining room. They came in dusty and tired, washing their hands at the pump outside before taking their seats. Zelda served the food, aware of curious glances but grateful no one spoke to her directly. Gideon sat at the head of the table, eating in silence while his men talked around him. She noticed he had changed his shirt and combed his hair. When she set his plate before him, he looked up and met her eyes. "Thank you, Miss Patterson. You are welcome, Mr. Irving." The men cleaned their plates and asked for seconds. The pie disappeared completely. As they filed out, several tipped their hats to her, murmuring thanks. Tommy was the last to leave, grinning broadly. "That was the best meal we have had in a week, Miss Patterson. Mrs. Kowalski is a fine cook, but I think you might have her beat." "I heard that, you ungrateful boy," Mrs. Kowalski called from the kitchen, but there was warmth in her voice. Zelda washed dishes while the older woman kept her company, offering advice about where things were stored and what the men preferred. Gradually, Zelda learned more about the ranch. Gideon's father had come west after the war, determined to build something lasting. He had chosen this land carefully, near water and good grazing. He had hired good men and treated them well. When he died, Gideon had stepped into his father's boots without hesitation. "He works too hard," Mrs. Kowalski said, "from before dawn until after dark, every single day. He needs a wife, children, a life beyond this ranch, but he says there is no time for such things." Zelda dried the last plate and said nothing. It was not her concern what Gideon Irving needed. That night, lying in bed listening to unfamiliar sounds, the cry of coyotes and the restless movement of horses in the barn, she allowed herself to think about the rancher. He was handsome, certainly. And there was something compelling about his quiet competence, the way his men clearly respected him. But she would be here only a week. Then it was back to St. Louis, back to her small rented room and her struggle to survive. She woke before dawn, as she always had, and went down to start breakfast. The kitchen was still dark, but she found matches and lit the lamps, then got the stove going. Coffee first, then eggs, bacon, potatoes, more biscuits. The sky was just beginning to lighten when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Gideon appeared in the kitchen doorway, surprise crossing his features when he saw her. "You are up early." "Ranch work starts early, Mr. Irving. I assumed the men would need feeding." "They do. Usually Mrs. Kowalski has breakfast ready by 5:30. "It will be ready," Zelda assured him. He poured himself coffee from the pot she had just finished brewing, wrapping both hands around the mug as if cold despite the warm morning. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching her work. "You did well last night. The men were pleased. Thank you. Mrs. Kowalski says you lost your father recently. That must have been difficult." The sympathy in his voice caught her off guard. She cracked eggs into a bowl more forcefully than necessary. "Life continues regardless of our losses, Mr. Irving. We do what we must. Still, I am sorry." The men came in at 5:30 as predicted, hungry and ready for the day. Zelda kept the food coming, refilling coffee cups and making sure everyone had enough. The conversation was mostly about the day's work: fence mending in the north pasture, moving cattle to fresh grazing, checking the water level in the creek. Gideon left with his men and the house fell quiet again. Zelda cleaned up breakfast, then started preparing bread dough. Mrs. Kowalski hobbled in on her crutches, determined to supervise despite Zelda's protests. "You have good instincts in the kitchen," the older woman observed. "Your mother taught you well. She said cooking was both an art and a science. You need precise measurements, but also the ability to adjust based on what the food tells you." A wise woman. "What was your father's trade?" "He was a shopkeeper. Dry goods. After my mother died, he tried his best, but he was never quite the same. He made some bad investments, trusted the wrong people. When he died, there was nothing left but debts. So you came west." "I came west," Zelda agreed, "though only temporarily. Once I have enough saved, I will return to St. Louis and find proper employment. Perhaps as a seamstress or in a restaurant." Mrs. Kowalski made a non-committal sound. "The West has a way of getting into your blood. You may find it harder to leave than you think." The days developed a rhythm. Zelda woke before dawn, made breakfast, cleaned, prepared lunch, baked, made supper, cleaned again. Between meals, she explored the house and the immediate grounds, always careful not to interfere with the ranch work. On the third day, she was hanging laundry when she heard shouting from the direction of the barn. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran toward the sound. One of the horses had gotten spooked and kicked down part of its stall, trapping Tommy beneath the broken boards. Gideon was already there, lifting the heavy timber off the young man with strength born of desperation. Blood streamed from a gash on Tommy's forehead. "Get the medical kit from the house," Gideon ordered without looking up. "Kitchen, top shelf of the pantry." Zelda ran, her skirts clutched in both hands. She found the kit and raced back. Gideon had pulled Tommy clear and was examining his injuries. "Head wounds always bleed worse than they are," he said, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "But his arm might be broken." Zelda knelt beside them, opening the medical kit. She had tended her father during his final illness and had learned basic nursing. Working together, she and Gideon cleaned Tommy's wounds and fashioned a sling for his arm. "We need to get the doctor," Zelda said. "Thompson, ride to town," Gideon called to one of the other hands. "Bring Doc Morrison." They moved Tommy to the house, settling him on the sofa in the parlor. Zelda brought cool water to clean the blood from his face and a blanket to ward off shock. Gideon stood nearby, his jaw tight with worry. "He is a good kid," he said quietly. "Reminds me of my younger brother. You have a brother, had. He died in the war. He was 16, lied about his age to enlist." Gideon's hands clenched into fists. "I was supposed to look after him." The war was not your fault, Mr. Irving. Grief does not care about logic, Miss Patterson. The doctor arrived 2 hours later, examined Tommy, and confirmed that while the arm was indeed broken, it was a clean break that should heal well. He set it properly, gave instructions for care, and left laudanum for the pain. That evening, Zelda brought supper to Tommy in the parlor while the other men ate in the dining room. He was groggy from the medicine but managed a weak smile. "Thank you for helping me, Miss Patterson." "You are welcome, Tommy. Just rest now." When she returned to the kitchen, Gideon was there, waiting. He stood when she entered, an oddly formal gesture. "I wanted to thank you for your quick thinking today, and your steady hands. Many women would have fainted at the sight of so much blood." "Fainting helps no one, Mr. Irving." "No, I suppose it does not." He hesitated, then added, "You have been here 3 days. How are you finding ranch life? It is different from the city, quieter, more space." She wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly nervous under his steady gaze. "I think I understand why people choose to live out here, despite the hardships." "What do you understand?" "That there is a kind of freedom in this vastness. Room to breathe, to think, to be yourself without the weight of others' expectations." Something shifted in his expression, a warmth entering those storm-gray eyes. "Yes, exactly that. I could not have said it better myself." They stood in the kitchen, the lamp light soft around them, and Zelda felt something stir in her chest, a dangerous feeling, one she could not afford. "I should check on the bread for tomorrow," she said, breaking the moment. "Of course. Good night, Miss Patterson." "Good night, Mr. Irving." But she dreamed of him that night, of his strong hands and serious eyes, and woke feeling unsettled. The 4th day brought a problem. The cold cellar where they stored meat and dairy had a broken door that would not close properly. Gideon discovered it early morning and swore under his breath. "What is wrong?" Zelda asked, coming to investigate. "The latch is broken. If this door does not stay shut, we will lose everything in there to spoilage or animals." He examined the mechanism, frowning. "I can fix it, but it will take most of the morning, and I need to ride out to check on the cattle in the far pasture." "Can one of the other men do it?" "They are all needed for the cattle drive. We are moving the herd to summer grazing today." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The timing could not be worse. "I could ride with you," Zelda heard herself say. "To the far pasture, I mean. I know how to ride." "That way you could assess the situation there and get back to fix the door." He looked at her with surprise. "You ride?" "My father kept a horse for deliveries. I often rode with him." She lifted her chin. "I am not helpless, Mr. Irving." A slow smile crossed his face, transforming his usually serious expression. "No, Miss Patterson, I am beginning to realize you are not helpless at all. If you truly do not mind, the company would be welcome." An hour later, Zelda found herself on horseback for the first time in months, following Gideon across the prairie. He had given her a gentle mare named Daisy and watched carefully to ensure she was comfortable before setting a faster pace. The morning was glorious, the sky impossibly blue, the grass rippling in waves under the wind. Gideon pointed out landmarks, the creek that fed their water supply, the line of cottonwoods marking the northern boundary of his land, the distant mountains that still held snow on their peaks despite the summer heat. "How much land do you have?" she asked. 3,000 acres. Not the biggest ranch in Wyoming, but large enough to run a good-sized herd. My father believed in sustainable grazing, moving the cattle regularly so the land could recover. It takes more work, but it means the ranch will still be here in 50 years. You plan to be here in 50 years? "I plan to be here until I die," he said simply. "This land is in my blood now. I cannot imagine living anywhere else." They reached the far pasture, where Gideon dismounted to check a fence line and examine the grazing conditions. Zelda stayed on her horse, watching him work. He moved with easy confidence, his body at home in this landscape. She found herself studying the line of his shoulders, the way sunlight caught in his dark hair. "Stop this," she told herself sternly. "You are leaving in 3 days," but her heart was not listening to logic. They started back toward the ranch house, riding side by side now. Gideon was more talkative than she had ever heard him, pointing out wildlife, sharing stories about the ranch's early days. She learned that his mother had died giving birth to his younger brother, that his father had raised both boys alone until the war came and took one of them. "After my brother died, my father threw himself into the ranch work," Gideon said. "I think it was the only way he could survive the grief. When he died, I understood why. Working this land, caring for the animals, building something that lasts, it gives meaning to the pain." "Is that why you work so hard? To escape grief?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps, or perhaps I am trying to honor what they built. To be worthy of their sacrifices. I think," Zelda said carefully, "that they would want you to be happy, not just worthy." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw vulnerability beneath his usual composed exterior. "What about you, Miss Patterson? What would make you happy?" The question caught her off guard. What did make her happy? She had spent so long simply trying to survive, she had forgotten to consider happiness. "I do not know," she admitted. "Safety, perhaps, financial security, a place to belong. You do not have that in St. Louis." "I have debts and a rented room in a boarding house. I have no family, no close friends. I have existence, but not belonging." They had reached the ranch buildings. Gideon dismounted and helped her down, his hands steady on her waist. For a moment they stood very close, and Zelda's breath caught. "You seem to belong here just fine," he said quietly. "These past 4 days, watching you work in the kitchen, tend to Tommy, ride across the prairie. You fit here, Zelda." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips made her heart race. "I am only here for a week," she reminded him, though her voice lacked conviction. "About that." He stepped back, running a hand through his hair in what she was beginning to recognize as a nervous gesture. "Mrs. Kowalski needs at least 6 weeks to heal properly. I know we agreed to 1 week, but I would like to ask if you would consider staying longer. I can pay you more, of course, double what we originally discussed." She should say no. The longer she stayed, the harder it would be to leave. But looking into his eyes, seeing hope and something deeper there, she found herself nodding. "I can stay longer, until Mrs. Kowalski is fully recovered." The smile that spread across his face was worth every risk her heart was taking. That night at supper, Gideon announced that Zelda would be staying on for several more weeks. The men cheered, and Tommy, who was recovering well, declared it the best news he had heard all week. Even Mrs. Kowalski looked pleased. "Perhaps now this house will feel like a home again," the older woman said cryptically. The days blended into weeks. June gave way to July, and the Wyoming summer settled over the ranch with lazy heat. Zelda fell into the rhythm of ranch life as if she had been born to it. She learned to read the weather signs, to tell when the cattle were restless, to understand the unspoken language between Gideon and his men. And she learned Gideon himself, how he took his coffee, black and strong, how he always checked on the horses personally each night, no matter how tired he was, how he read by lamplight in the evening, poetry mostly, which surprised her, how he was unfailingly kind to everyone, even when exhausted. They began taking evening walks together, ostensibly so Gideon could show her more of the ranch, but really because both of them craved the company. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Zelda told him about her mother's death, her father's decline. Gideon shared memories of his brother, stories that made them both laugh and cry. Samuel wanted to be a lawyer, Gideon said one evening as they walked along the creek bank. He was always arguing, always had to prove his point. Our father used to joke that he should have been called Solomon instead of Samuel. He would be proud of you, I think, of what you have built here. Would he? Gideon picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the water. Sometimes I wonder if I am hiding out here instead of living. If I am using the ranch as an excuse to avoid life. You are not hiding, you are building. There is a difference. He turned to face her, and in the fading light his eyes were intense. You have changed something here, Zelda. In this house, in the men, in me. Everything feels different since you arrived. Her pulse quickened. Different how? Alive. Like I have been asleep for 2 years and suddenly woke up. He took a step closer. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I am not imagining this connection between us. You are not imagining it, she whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, callous thumbs gentle on her cheeks. I know you plan to go back to St. Louis. I know this was supposed to be temporary, but I have to ask, have to know. Is there any chance you might consider staying? Not as the cook, but as something more. As my wife. The world seemed to stop. Zelda's heart hammered against her ribs. She had known this was coming, had felt the pull between them growing stronger each day, but hearing the actual words still shocked her. Gideon, we have only known each other 5 weeks. I know. It is fast, probably too fast. But out here we do not have the luxury of long courtships and formal engagements. Life is uncertain. I learned that when I lost my brother, when I lost my father. We have to grab happiness when we find it. His eyes searched hers. I am not asking you to answer right now. Think about it. Take all the time you need. Just promise me you will consider it. I will consider it, she managed. He smiled then, that rare, beautiful smile that made her knees weak, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. That is all I can ask. They walked back to the house in comfortable silence, but Zelda's mind was racing. Marriage to Gideon Irving, a life on this ranch. Could she really do it? Could she give up her plans to return to St. Louis and build a life here instead? Mrs. Kowalski was in the kitchen when they returned, her knowing eyes taking in their joined hands and flushed faces. So, she said, it is about time. Zelda blushed furiously, but Gideon just laughed. Nothing is decided yet, Mrs. K. Do not start planning a wedding. I will plan what I like, the older woman said. And what I am planning is to finish healing so I can dance at your wedding. That night, Zelda lay awake, weighing her options. St. Louis held nothing for her now except memories and debt. Here she had purpose, community, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. But marriage was a serious commitment. What if she was making a mistake? What if the attraction faded? What if ranch life became too hard in winter, too isolated, too demanding? But then she remembered Gideon's smile, the way her heart lifted every morning when she saw him at breakfast, the sense of rightness she felt riding across the prairie. This was not infatuation. This was real. She made her decision somewhere around midnight and slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. The next morning, she found Gideon in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. He looked up when she entered, and something in her expression must have given her away because he set down his tools and walked toward her. Yes, she said before he could speak. My answer is yes. I will marry you, Gideon Irving. The joy on his face was transcendent. He swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, he kissed her, properly this time, and Zelda felt her entire world shift and settle into place. We will need to go to Pueblo for a license, he said when they finally broke apart. And find a minister. How soon are you willing to do this? How soon can we manage it? There is a circuit preacher who comes through once a month. He is due next week." Gideon grinned. "Think you can plan a wedding in 7 days? I can try." The ranch erupted in happy chaos. Mrs. Kowalski declared herself in charge of everything, broken leg or not. The ranch hands pitched in to clean and decorate the barn for the ceremony. Tommy rode to neighboring ranches to spread the word and invite folks. Gideon ordered lumber and supplies from town to build furniture for the house, determined to make it worthy of his bride. Zelda worked on her dress, altering one of the few nice dresses she owned with lace from Mrs. Kowalski's carefully hoarded supplies. In quiet moments, she and Gideon stole time together, walking, talking, kissing, learning each other. "Are you scared?" he asked her one evening. "Terrified," she admitted, "but excited too. Is that strange? If it is, then we are both strange because I feel exactly the same way." The day before the wedding, Zelda's doubts resurged. She stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the vast prairie, and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. She barely knew this man. She was giving up her independence, her freedom. What if he changed after marriage? What if she disappointed him? Gideon found her there, read the fear on her face. "Talk to me," he said gently. "What if I am not cut out for this life? What if I fail you?" He took her hands in his. "Zelda, look at me. We are both taking a leap of faith here. I have no guarantee that I will be a good husband. I work too much. I am too serious. I am probably going to make 100 mistakes. But I promise you this. I will wake up every morning and choose you, choose us. Whatever comes, we will face it together." "Together," she repeated, and the fear eased. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Zelda dressed in her altered gown, white with delicate lace at the collar and sleeves. Mrs. Kowalski helped arrange her hair and pinned a small circlet of wildflowers as a makeshift veil. "You are beautiful," the older woman said, tears in her eyes. "Like a daughter to me already." The barn had been transformed. Someone had strung flowers and ribbons from the rafters. Chairs borrowed from neighbors lined makeshift aisles. The entire town seemed to have turned out, along with ranchers from miles around. Apparently, Gideon Irving getting married was big news. Tommy walked her down the aisle, proud and nervous in his role. And then Zelda saw Gideon waiting at the front, dressed in a new suit, his eyes locked on her with such love and devotion that every doubt evaporated. The circuit preacher, Reverend Matthews, was a jovial man who kept the ceremony simple and heartfelt. Gideon's voice was steady as he recited his vows, promising to love and cherish her all the days of his life. Zelda's voice shook slightly, but her conviction was clear. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Gideon kissed her softly, sweetly, and the barn erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration lasted until well after dark. There was food, music, dancing. Zelda danced with Tommy, with each of the ranch hands, with neighbors she was just meeting. But her favorite dance was with Gideon, held close in his arms as a fiddle played a slow waltz. "Happy," he murmured against her hair, "incredibly. Good, because I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." When they finally escaped to the house, Mrs. Kowalski had tactfully retired to her room. Gideon carried Zelda over the threshold, making her laugh. "That is supposed to be for good luck," she said. "Then we will have excellent luck, because I am not putting you down until we reach our bedroom." He kept his word, carrying her all the way up the stairs. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. The next morning, Zelda woke to find Gideon already awake, watching her with a soft expression. "Good morning, Mrs. Irving." She smiled at the name. "Good morning, husband. I have to check on the cattle today, but I can be back by noon, unless you would like to come with me. I would like that very much." They rode out together just as they had that first time, but everything was different now. They were partners, equals, building a life together. Gideon showed her more of the ranch, explaining his plans for expansion, asking her opinion on decisions. She realized he truly meant to include her in everything, to make this their ranch, not just his. The summer passed in golden happiness. Zelda settled fully into ranch life, learning new skills every day. She could now rope a calf, deliver a foal, mend tack, and shoot a rifle with reasonable accuracy. The house became a true home under her care, filled with flowers from her new garden and the smell of fresh baking. Mrs. Kowalski recovered fully and insisted on returning to work, but with Zelda's help, the burden was lighter. The two women developed a warm friendship, working side by side in the kitchen, sharing stories and laughter. By September, Zelda suspected she might be pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Gideon. She found him in the barn one evening, and the look on his face when she shared the news was everything she could have hoped for. "A baby," he breathed, pulling her close. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He kissed her deeply. "You have given me everything, Zelda. A home, a family, a future. I never imagined I could be this blessed." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Gideon was attentive to the point of being overprotective, worrying about every little thing until Zelda had to laugh at him. "Women have been having babies for thousands of years, Gideon. I am not made of glass. I know, but you are precious to me. I cannot help but worry." Winter came, harsh and beautiful. The ranch slowed its pace, the cattle brought closer to shelter, the men focused on maintenance and repair. Zelda spent cozy evenings by the fire with Gideon, reading together, talking about their hopes for the baby. "What if it is a boy?" Gideon asked one snowy evening. "What if it is a girl? Either way, I will love them beyond measure." He placed a gentle hand on her growing belly. "But I find myself hoping for a son, someone to teach everything my father taught me." "And if it is a daughter, you will teach her too," he smiled. "You are right. This is the West. Our children will need to be strong and capable, regardless of their gender." In March of 1879, Zelda went into labor. The doctor was summoned from Pueblo, along with Mrs. Kowalski and two neighbor women experienced in childbirth. Gideon paced the parlor, beside himself with worry. The labor was long but not unusually difficult. As dawn broke over the prairie, Zelda delivered a healthy baby boy with a powerful set of lungs and his father's dark hair. When Gideon was finally allowed into the bedroom, he approached with tears streaming down his face. Zelda placed the baby in his arms, and she watched as this strong, stoic man completely melted. "He is perfect," Gideon whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Gideon looked up, eyes still wet. "Samuel, if you are agreeable, after my brother." "Samuel Irving," Zelda tested the name. "It is perfect." The baby years were busy and exhausting and wonderful. Samuel was a happy child, curious about everything, fearless to the point of giving his parents heart attacks. He learned to walk early, stumbling after his father around the ranch, determined to be involved in everything. When Samuel was 2, Zelda became pregnant again. This time, she delivered twin girls, Grace and Georgia, named after Gideon's mother and Zelda's mother respectively. Gideon was outnumbered now, surrounded by women, and claimed to love every minute of it. The ranch prospered. Gideon's careful management and sustainable practices paid off in healthy cattle and good grazing land. He expanded slowly but steadily, hiring more hands, building better facilities. Zelda managed the household finances, revealing an unexpected talent for numbers that delighted Gideon. "You should have been running a business yourself," he told her once. "I am," she replied. "This ranch is as much a business as a home." They became pillars of the community. Zelda hosted gatherings, helped organize a small school in Pueblo, tended to sick neighbors. Gideon served on the town council, mediated disputes, offered work to men down on their luck. Together, they built something larger than themselves. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Gideon planned a surprise. He had Tommy watch the children and took Zelda on a picnic to the place where he had first proposed. 5 years, he said, pouring her wine. 5 years since you agreed to stay forever. Best decision I ever made. Even when Samuel let the chickens out and we spent 3 hours chasing them. Even then. Even when the twins decided to paint the kitchen wall with jam, Zelda laughed. Even then, you impossible man. I love this life. I love our children. I love you. I love you too. More than I knew it was possible to love someone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I never properly gave you an engagement ring, what with the rushed wedding. I would like to rectify that now. Inside the box was a simple gold band with a single sapphire, the color of the Wyoming sky. Gideon, it is beautiful. It belonged to my mother. My father gave it to me before he died, told me to save it for the woman who would make me whole again. That is you, Zelda. You made me whole. She kissed him, tasting tears and wine and love. Put it on me. He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. The years continued their gentle march. Samuel grew into a responsible young man, taking on more ranch duties. The twins were inseparable, wild and brave and full of laughter. 2 more children joined the family. Another boy, Joseph, and finally a youngest daughter, Mary. Mrs. Kowalski passed peacefully in her sleep when she was 72, leaving a hole in the family but also countless memories and the satisfaction of a life well lived. Zelda mourned her like a mother. Tommy married a girl from Pueblo and built a small house on ranch property, becoming Gideon's foreman. Several of the original ranch hands retired, replaced by younger men, but the culture of respect and fair treatment remained constant. Zelda's hair began to show silver threads. Gideon's temples went gray. But their love only deepened, weathering the inevitable storms of marriage and emerging stronger each time. On a warm summer evening when they had been married 20 years, Zelda stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Gideon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About a scared young woman who came here planning to stay 1 week. About a newspaper advertisement that changed her entire life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not answered that advertisement? Never. This was always where I was meant to be, with you building this life, raising these children." She turned in his arms. "I was so lost when I came here, Gideon, adrift and alone. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. You gave me everything. You gave me just as much. More, even. Before you, I was simply existing, going through the motions. You taught me how to live again." Samuel appeared around the corner of the house, now a young man of 21, tall and strong like his father. "Mother, father, supper is ready. The kids are getting impatient. We are coming," Zelda called, but Gideon held her a moment longer. 20 years, and I still get excited to see you across the breakfast table. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky. Now come on before our children eat everything." The dining room was chaos, as it usually was with 5 children ranging from 6 to 21. The twins, now 18, were arguing about something. Joseph was trying to sneak food to the dog under the table. Little Mary was chattering about her day, but it was happy chaos, the kind that made a house a home. As Zelda looked around the table at her family, at the life she had built in this wild, beautiful place, she felt profound gratitude. She had come to Wyoming broken and desperate, expecting nothing more than a week's work and a small wage. Instead, She had found love, purpose, belonging. After supper, when the children had dispersed to their various evening activities, Gideon pulled Zelda out to the porch again. The stars were emerging, brilliant in the dark sky. "I have been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About expanding the house. Adding on to the east side. Samuel will want his own place eventually, but Joseph is only 12, and Mary just 6. We will have children at home for years yet." "That sounds wonderful. What brought this on?" "I want to make sure this house is big enough for all our grandchildren when they come to visit. I want to build something that will last generations, Zelda. A legacy for Samuel and the twins and Joseph and Mary." She squeezed his hand. "Then we will build it together, just like we have built everything else." 2 more years passed in gentle happiness. Samuel married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, a smart, capable young woman named Hannah who fit into the Irving family as if she had always belonged. Within a year, they presented Gideon and Zelda with their first grandchild, a boy named Gideon Jr. Holding his namesake, Gideon Sr. wept openly. "My father, my brother, now my grandson. The circle continues." Zelda watched him with their grandchild and fell in love all over again. This man, who had been so lost and serious when she first met him, had become a joyful patriarch, surrounded by family and legacy. The twins left for college, determined to get educations before deciding their futures. Gideon supported this wholeheartedly, proud of his daughter's ambition. Joseph showed signs of being a natural rancher, already displaying Gideon's talent for reading the land and the animals. And Mary, the baby, was artistic and dreamy, filling notebooks with drawings and stories. On a crisp autumn day when Zelda was 47 and Gideon 53, they rode out together to check on the cattle, just the two of them like in the early days. The ranch now sprawled over 5,000 acres, a testament to years of careful growth. But the heart of it remained the same: the white house with green shutters, the barn, the sense of home. "You ever regret it?" Gideon asked as they sat on their horses, surveying the land. "Giving up city life, marrying a rancher, tying yourself to this remote place?" Zelda smiled. "Not once. Not for a single moment. This is where I was always meant to be, Gideon, with you. I asked you to stay a lifetime. I should thank you for actually doing it." "The lifetime is not over yet," she pointed out. "We still have many years ahead of us." "Then I will spend every one of them grateful that you answered that advertisement, that you came here, that you chose me." They rode back as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The house glowed with warm light, smoke rising from the chimney. Through the windows, Zelda could see Mary setting the table, Joseph bringing in firewood, the ordinary domestic scenes that made up a life. "I came here expecting to work for a week," Zelda said softly. "Instead, I found my forever." Gideon reached across the space between their horses and took her hand. "And I found mine." The years continued, gentle and full. The twins returned from college, Grace becoming a teacher in Pueblo, Georgia, marrying a doctor and moving to Cheyenne but visiting often. Joseph took over more of the ranch operations as Gideon slowed down, proving himself a worthy successor. Mary married a writer and moved to Denver but remained close to the family. Samuel and Hannah had 3 more children, filling the expanded house with noise and laughter whenever they visited. The ranch hands came and went, but the culture of fairness and respect Gideon had established remained. Gideon and Zelda grew old together, their love weathering time like oak weathering storms, growing stronger and more beautiful with each passing year. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 40th. They became great-grandparents, watching another generation join the family. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch. Children and great-grandchildren filled every room, spilled out onto the porch, scattered across the yard. A huge celebration was held in the barn, echoing their wedding so many years ago. As Zelda and Gideon danced together, moving slowly to an old waltz, she looked into his eyes and saw the same love she had seen on their wedding day, only deeper now, richer. 50 years, she marveled. Half a century since I stepped off that stagecoach, terrified and alone. Best week's work I ever hired, Gideon said, making her laugh. I love you, Gideon Irving. Then, now, always. And I love you, Zelda Irving. Thank you for staying. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for being my partner, my love, my everything. Around them, their family celebrated 3 generations of Irvings, all stemming from a single decision made in 1878. A newspaper advertisement, a desperate woman, a lonely rancher, a week that turned into forever. As the party continued into the night, Zelda stood on the porch with Gideon, watching their family through the window. Samuel was teaching one of his grandchildren to play the fiddle. The twins were laughing together, their bond as strong as ever. Joseph was holding his new baby daughter, looking terrified and awed. Mary was reading a story to a cluster of children. We did well, Gideon said quietly. We did very well. Any regrets? Zelda considered the question seriously, then shook her head. Not a single one. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of fear or doubt, it all led here. To this family, this legacy, this love. I would not change a thing. Neither would I. He kissed her temple gently. You came to work for a week. I asked you to stay a lifetime, and you gave me so much more than that. You gave me everything. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding, the birth of their children, every triumph and tragedy. The prairie stretched endless under the night sky, wild and beautiful and home. And in the morning, they would wake together as they had for 50 years, grateful for another day, another chance to love, another moment in the extraordinary life they had built from a simple advertisement and a leap of faith. Years later, when Gideon passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 79, Zelda mourned but did not break. She had loved him for 56 years, and that love sustained her even in grief. She remained on the ranch, surrounded by family, watching as Joseph passed the operation to his own children, seeing the legacy continue into yet another generation. When Zelda finally joined Gideon in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch, she was 83 years old, matriarch of a family that numbered over 40 people. She had lived a full, rich life, far beyond anything she could have imagined that day she stepped off the stagecoach in Pueblo. The ranch endured, the white house with green shutters still standing, still full of Irvings, still home. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind whispered through the grass, it seemed possible to hear echoes of that first meeting. A scared young woman, a lonely rancher, and the beginning of a love that would span generations. She came to work for a week. He asked her to stay a lifetime. And together, they built forever.